This is The Reality. Hello again, and welcome to The Reality. My name's Dudley Anderson, so good to be with you, sharing the story of lives touched and changed for good, by the reality of Jesus. If you've got a story to tell of what God has done in your life, we'd love to hear from you. Please write to me by email, dudley@surereality.net. Email me, dudley@surereality.net. Human trafficking is a criminal activity that is characterized by the exploitation of adults and children for profit. The two most common types of trafficking are labor and sexual slavery. There are an average of 30 million people being trafficked worldwide. The average lifespan of a trafficking victim is 7 to 10 years from the time that they started being trafficked. The Christian charity Destiny Rescue was set up to rescue children from sexual exploitation and human trafficking and help them to stay safe. Day and night, men enter some of the darkest places on the planet in search of children trapped in sexual trafficking and exploitation. Once identified, Destiny Rescue agents work relentlessly to bring these children back to freedom.
Destiny Rescue is a mission-based Christian organisation, and its primary objective is to find children who have been trafficked into sexual exploitation. And we send people in who are undercover to find those children and to work out a plan to extract them from that exploitation. God loves these kids. It all comes down to God. That's God at work through people extracting these children.
Today on The Reality, we speak with Tim and Tina from Destiny Rescue in their office. I began by asking them to explain to us the work of Destiny Rescue.
Destiny Rescue is a mission-based Christian organisation. It's a non-government, not-for-profit organisation, and its primary objective is to find children who have been trafficked into sexual exploitation around the world, and that's what we do. So we operate in multiple countries. Generally, those countries will be the hotspots of sexual exploitation of children, and we send people in who are undercover, posing as perpetrators, posing as customers, to find those children and to work out a plan to extract them from that exploitation.
So you actually send them in like agents to go and rescue these girls? That sounds like a very dangerous operation.
It can be extremely dangerous. Each scenario can be very, very different. These can be highly organised criminal enterprises that are controlling children, but it may just as likely be a very small establishment, just a husband and wife running a bar where they happen to be selling girls alongside food and drinks. It might just be a pimp on a street selling a series of girls. So all very different. Some situations, yes, most definitely very, very dangerous, some less so.
So is it mainly only girls, Tina, or do they traffic boys?
I think in the majority of countries that we work within, it's true to say that we work mainly with girls, although I think there is a problem with young boys as well, and in a couple of countries now we also help those boys as well. And sometimes if you go in and you do a raid and there's girls and boys, then clearly you're going to bring out whichever children are there.
So how do these young girls, and I'm assuming they're teenage girls, how do they actually end up getting trafficked?
Well, all manner of ways. It can be as draconian as a child being snatched off a street by a very organised gang and sold on. It can be as straightforward as a mother and father living in abject poverty, desperate to provide extra income to feed other children, and they will send willingly their oldest daughter into a bar to be exploited. They won't ask too many questions as long as the money comes home. Sometimes it can be a child putting themselves into the hands of pimps and perpetrators just to pay their way through college, to make something better of their life. You know, if they come from a background where it's fraught with poverty and they have no real hope, no real income, then that's where we find these situations arise. Generally, always the one thing that links all of these different scenarios together is poverty. These are vulnerable people.
So how would it differ from the general sex trade and where young girls choose to go into prostitution?
I mean, one of the questions we're often asked is, isn't it a girl's right, or isn't it a woman's right to do that and to put themselves in that situation? Often people will say, you see the girls working in the red light districts, they're laughing, they're joking, they're smiling. But when you actually talk to the girls who are in this situation, the girls will all tell you the same thing, that none of them want to be there. They're not there by choice. They're there because generally there's some sort of economic situation that has forced them into that situation. And oftentimes we find in certain countries it's a very cultural thing in terms of a huge onus on a child to help provide for the family. So they feel a huge responsibility to play their part, to send money home to mum and dad. And when you come from a situation where you're living in poverty, or you might be from a marginalised people group, and you don't have opportunities, you don't have a good education, you don't have qualifications, then the only marketplace that's open to you really is the sex industry, because you don't need any qualifications. The door is open for you to walk straight into. And that's how we find, kids get involved in it, and once they're in, and it's very difficult to extract themselves from that. So I would say that I have personally never met a child or a young woman who wants to be where they are being exploited, but they're there because they've had to put themselves in that situation, or they've been put by someone else in that situation.
And some will go into that situation, that they're coerced into it, so that they may be tricked into it. So certainly in some of the countries, they will be given the promise of something better, and they will go thinking that they're going to work in a restaurant, in a cafe. Maybe they're going even to be married somewhere, and so they'll be told one story, something that seems far better than they could ever hope or imagine, considering where they're currently living and their current lifestyle. And so they might go willingly, but they really don't understand or don't know what it is that waits for them at the end. And then there are those that are forced to go, aren't there? There are those that are forcibly taken. So I think it's quite variable.
Well, you speak about lifestyle just there. These young girls end up in that scenario, and they perhaps get used to it. And would you say that many of them, because they've got used to the lifestyle, choose to remain in it? Let me ask you, how do they react when you walk into a bar and walk up to one of the young girls and say to them, you're being exploited, we want to rescue you? Are they willing? Do they want to go?
Okay, it's fair to say that when a child has been in a situation where they're being exploited for a period of time, there are kickbacks. Okay, so they're going to earn more money doing that than they would be able to any other way. So they can buy the clothes that they'd like to buy. They could buy the phone that they want to own. So there are things that once the child is in can help keep them in that situation for sure. But when you build a relationship with a child in one of those situations, because the way oftentimes we do this with our agents, will go in and it can take a period of days, weeks, months even, for them to really gain the confidence of that child. And what you've got to convey to that child or that young woman is, we can help you find a way of creating an income which is going to match what you're doing here, so you don't have to do this anymore. And we find that if you are able to give the skill set or the opportunities to somebody who's caught in that situation, then more often than not they are going to accept that help, because they really don't want to be compromising themselves sexually. And
you're a Christian organisation, so spiritually speaking, your agents go in there, you yourselves and the administration staff, generally the whole organisation from top to bottom. Do you present the hope of Jesus in the whole ministry?
Yes, I mean, clearly it depends which country we're working in. It depends how open and free we are to share the gospel. Certainly, one of the objectives we have with every child rescues is to expose them to the gospel, but that might be done in very different ways. depending on the country and the restrictions that might be placed upon us. I mean, there's some countries where it would be very difficult to openly talk about the gospel, but you share the gospel in other ways, maybe in your actions and other things. Certainly in some countries where we work, we are able to openly share the gospel, and the staff on the ground are able to do that. Each of the girls, when they come into our project or partner organisations where it's possible, then they would talk to them about the love of Christ and the hope that they can find in that.
Fantastic. So how do you build a trust in these young girls? You've rescued a girl, you've gone into a pub or a bar or a nightclub, and you've convinced her that she shouldn't be there, and she's come out of that scenario. How do you build her trust?
We work constantly. It evolves the way we do this, and we work at ways now to legitimise to the child that the agent is building a relationship with, so she feels that it's more than just a flip of a coin, it's more than just a 50-50. In the past, I've spoken personally to survivors from sexual exploitation, and they've told me it was a 50-50 decision. Why should I believe this person who's offering me a hand of hope?
Because, forgive me for interrupting, at the end of the day, you're a bloke like the man who's kidnapped her or coerced her into that scenario. You coming with an option. How does she tell the difference?
Yeah, so that's absolutely right. So oftentimes in the past it's been, they've got to make a decision, and I've been sold before. Why isn't this guy just going to take me and sell me to someone else? Okay, so so what we've done, we've worked on methods to enable the agents to legitimise what it is they're offering, the care package they're offering. So we have visual aids, we have sort of videos that the agents will carry concealed on their phones, so they can show the child. It shows them, shows where the project base would be, where they would immediately go to for immediate aftercare, and just show them things that would help them make a more informed decision, or be able to trust that person more readily.
Do you ever take any rescued people, perhaps when they're no longer children but as adults, in with you?
Yeah, so we produce video content with interviews with survivors, girls that have directly been impacted by the work of Destiny Rescue in the most positive of ways. They'll give their testimony on video about where their life was at, where they were at when they were found, and how their life has changed since their rescue. We can show those films to girls in those situations, and that, you're right, that has a big impact on them. Yeah.
Because it's more than just some strange man walking into the bar and saying, "Hey, I want to rescue you." It's having the evidence with you. Well, it's wonderful talking to you about this. You guys are doing a fantastic job. Keep it up. We're going to take a little break and come back after this.
You're listening to The Reality, produced by Sure Reality, a listener-supported radio ministry. We depend on the generous gifts of our listeners to produce this program. You can help reach millions of folks with the sure reality of the message of Jesus by becoming a Sure Reality Vision Partner. To partner with us, please visit the website surereality.net and click on Become a Vision Partner.
You're listening to The Reality with me, Dudley Anderson. So good to be with you. If you've heard anything in our program today and you relate to any of these situations, we'd love to offer you some support. Please write to me by email, dudley@surereality.net. Again, if you've listened up today and you have some questions or you'd like some help, email dudley@surereality.net. Today we're talking with Tim and Tina from Destiny Rescue. Destiny Rescue is a Christian-based agency that locates victims of human trafficking worldwide who've been exploited for the sex trade and then rescues them by removing them from their exploitation. After rescuing them from the physical environment, Destiny Rescue offers these victims aftercare support to reintegrate them back into a safe environment. Tim and Tina have shared today how children are trafficked by abduction, coercion, and sometimes even sold by desperate parents living in poverty. Poverty being one of the primary drives of exploitation of children in underdeveloped nations. Destiny Rescue then offers loving care and assistance to these young people after they've been rescued. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 25, verse 40, "Assuredly I say unto you, inasmuch as you did to the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me." Tim and Tina and Destiny Rescue are fulfilling this mandate posed by Jesus.
Tim and Tina, talking to you about rescuing young girls that have been taken into prostitution, been trafficked, human trafficked, either voluntarily or under compulsion. You're doing a great work. But you have agents who go into these scenarios, into these pubs, these nightclubs, into the nightlife where these girls have been coerced and are, doing what they're doing under duress or for whatever reason. These guys must be trained, surely, not just in, communication, how to talk with the girls, but surely it's a dangerous scenario. Do you train your agents to protect themselves, and how do they get the training?
Yeah, okay, so you're absolutely right. It is a specialised skill set these guys need. And I must stress, it's not just guys. We have undercover female operatives as well in certain situations. But most of them, certainly the men, will go through significant training in terms of being able to get themselves out of a violent situation quickly. So we work with another organisation called SWAT Ministries, and they're former military, and they train all of our guys in self-defense and primarily how to get out of a situation, not to make that situation worse, but how you get yourself out as quickly as you can with the minimum of damage, to yourself personally. So we train our guys to protect themselves, look after themselves physically. We train them to use micro technology, so your hidden camera equipment, sound recording equipment, all of which is absolutely vital when you're trying to gather evidence, to present to your local government that you're working alongside. So the anti-trafficking human police that we work with in a variety of countries, we have to take evidence to them to show them that there is a case here. Are you going to work with us to bring this perpetrator to justice and help us rescue these kids? So they're trained that way too. But that's about it. Thereafter, the work goes to a different skill set together, which would be your aftercare workers working in more the emotional care and the physical care of these kids. Yeah.
So do the agents ever go in and arrest perpetrators? Do they have the authority to do anything of the sort?
In Nepal, we have unprecedented powers in terms of being able to stop and search vehicles at borders. It's quite unprecedented, and these are where our female operatives operate primarily, because it is a patriarchal society. And we find that if you're stopping girls who are being trafficked going across the border, they're not going to talk openly to male agents. So that's why we have female agents there. They have more powers, I think, legally than any other agent that we have operating anywhere else in the world. Our other agents in other nations will work shoulder to shoulder with anti-human trafficking police. So they will do the arresting, but we will facilitate the arrest. So we will set up the raid, we will make sure the raid goes down, we will make sure everything's in place for that police force or anti-human trafficking task force, whether they're special forces or whatever, just to get in there and do their job, which is the takedown physically of the perpetrator.
Have you gone into any clubs? Have you personally been involved in any raids?
Yes, quite a few. Yeah, I have. Yeah, some in sort of bars and things, smaller fry, and then right up to the largest ever anti-human trafficking raid in the Philippines in its history. Which was quite an experience working alongside the elite special forces in the Philippines. Yeah, it was. You knew it was real working with those guys. But yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And yourself, Tina, have you been involved on the street?
No. So my role when we were out there was very much in the we don't call it aftercare now, but in the reintegration work. So once the girls come into the care of either Destiny or a partner organisation, then I was more involved in.
So tell me a little bit about the aftercare then. We've got a girl out of the club, and she's still very shy, she's very embarrassed, she doesn't know what's going on, what she can really expect of you. Are you anything like the perpetrators? Are you different? How do you care for her? How do you convince her that you're on her side?
Again, I think it's done in different ways in different countries. So once upon a time, most of the girls that would be rescued would come into residential care. And I think that's the way a lot of Christian organisations worked across the globe. It was a lot of residential care and looking after. Destiny, like many, many other organisations, has moved away from residential care to try and get girls straight back into the community where it's safe to do so. So either in reintegration programmes of our own, but more and more so we're working alongside other organisations where the reintegration is really their forte, where they do that really well. So they will come into a programme of care, and that programme of care will be anything between 6 and 12 months, something like that, and there'll be a series of things put in place. So as a Christian organisation, like you say, where it is safe to do so, where we're allowed to, we will share the gospel with them. We put the girls through a post-traumatic counselling programme, a programme designed by a clinical psychologist that's specifically designed for people who've been through trauma. So that's very important, as you can imagine, for these girls because of the emotional effects. So it is I think it's a 12-part programme, and it goes through helping them to understand the feelings that they might have, some of the anger, to help them work through ways of reducing their levels of stress. And it moves through this programme and ultimately moves to forgiveness, because we know as Christians that actually we'll never really move on unless we have this ability to forgive. And then there's the physical side, because clearly these girls have, and boys too, that they have many, many issues, health issues, depending on the country, depending on their previous circumstances. But clearly if they've been sexually exploited, then we have some subtle standards that we work alongside partner organisations. They might be other NGOs that are medical, or they might be local healthcare organisations that we'll partner with to provide some very simple health assessments for the girls.
Wow. On an average, how many girls do you rescue in a year?
Well, this year, well over 2,000. So it's been a big year numbers-wise this year, and that is, you can definitely see a trend with the onset of COVID in the world. There are more vulnerable people than ever before. Poverty is affecting more people than ever before. And, where you've got vulnerable people, you have traffickers. You have people who act as agents for traffickers. They're looking to exploit vulnerable people. And we've noticed that this year there's been a surge in exploitation of children and adults as well. And it's also diversifying. So traditionally, our agents would have been on the streets, scouring the brothels, the sex clubs, all those sort of traditional places you would associate with sexual exploitation. But now, these guys are diversifying. So there's a huge surge in online abuse of children as well. So in the Philippines alone are saying that they've seen a 300% rise in online exploitation sexually of minors. It's shocking. It's shocking. So, yeah.
In closing, Tim, do you have a short story to tell, a success story of a young girl who's been rescued?
Yeah. There are so many, because we've seen so many lives changed. But I think if there were occasions where I've been the most impacted, I would say on one of the first operations I was directly involved in a Southern Asian nation. We were scouring a series of brothels, and we'd been given very reliable intelligence that there were children being sold in these particular establishments, and we had to go up into these buildings, and there were multiple rooms It was like a maze of stairwells, and on each, about 5 floors to this building, and off each floor there were multiple rooms, and we had to go through all of these without detection, really, trying to keep as low a profile as we could, which is very difficult, seeing as we were Westerners. We wouldn't have seen many Westerners in these establishments, and we had to find these children. And eventually we came to a room where we found these girls who were being sold, and they were about 13 or 14 years old. And we went through the process of sort of establishing how much they were being sold for with the pimps operating that particular room. And when we asked how much this particular girl cost, it was less than the price of a bottle of beer that they would have been happy to sell us. So it was about $4 US dollars, something like that. And that was shocking. That was the value that those people had placed on that precious child. A beautiful kid. And in God's eyes, she is incredibly precious. And his love and his compassion for her goes beyond anything that we could experience working in the field that we work in. But I found that just so shocking that anybody could value that child so low. That was just a terrible thing. And I'm just so grateful that she was one of about 9 children that we were able to rescue in those operations. So I always carry that with me, just how evil, how dark it is. But God loves these kids so much that he was able to facilitate the rescue of that child. It all comes down to God. We could not do this on our own, as an organisation. Not one of us would have the courage to go in and do that. That's God at work through people extracting these children. Our great hope for her and for all of the others that are rescued is that their life continues on a path to freedom, that they never go back to that exploitation experience again, that their life is changed for good forever. And that's what our great hope is for all of these children.
What an amazing couple, Tim and Tina, working for Destiny Rescue. Destiny Rescue presenting the hope that we find in the love of Jesus Christ for those who are suffering around the world under human trafficking. If you've been listening today and you're in a situation where you find yourself in need of rescue and you'd like to know more about Destiny Rescue, I'd like to point you to their website. It's destinyrescue.org. Destinyrescue, one word, .org. Or alternatively, you can drop me an email, dudley@surereality.net. I'd love to hear from you. Tim ended his conversation with us talking about newness, the newness of life, and life being changed for the good. In fact, it is the remit of this radio program to change lives for the good, making a difference to the message of hope and love as shared in the Word of God. I'd like to share with you one of my favorite scriptures from the Bible. If you're finding yourself facing some difficulties in life and you're looking for a new start, Isaiah 43 verse 19 says, "Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Shall you not know it? I will even make a road in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." These dear children and others like them around the world are facing a desert in life, a wilderness. And I encourage you to pray for those who are suffering this ill around the world. Maybe you find yourself in a situation where you're looking for a newness of life. Again, that email, do drop me a note, dudley@surereality.net. The Reality is produced by Sure Reality, a listener-supported radio ministry. You can find us at surereality.net. Till next time, from me, Dudley Anderson, take care and keep walking in the reality of Jesus.